Michael Porter Jr. is fantastic when healthy. Throughout MPJ's young NBA career, he's always been known as a guy that's extremely talented, and when he's out there on the court, he looks phenomenal. But the biggest issue for him, which is a common issue for a bunch of other players as well, is health. But especially for MPJ, it seems like he struggles to stay out there on the court consistently. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since high school, MPJ was seen as an extremely talented player. He had a ton of different abilities that just made him special. He had a phenomenal ability to shoot the 3-ball, he had a phenomenal ability to shoot the mid-range jump shot, he had a phenomenal ability to drive all the way to the basket, either dunk over players with the crazy athleticism that he did possess, but also finish around them with crafty layups as well. In terms of his scoring ability, he was just a total package, a legitimate 3-level scorer, but he also had that 6'10" size that really differentiated him from a bunch of other players. But although when on the court, it was very apparent that MPJ had a ton of talent, the issue with him was off the court. And even before he made it to the NBA, MPJ was dealing with a bunch of different significant injuries, specifically a major back issue, which turned out to be a really big problem for him. And going into the NBA, it was pretty clear that MPJ was a #1 overall selection type talent, but the reason why he was falling in that year's draft was due to those injuries. And the issue with it was not only was he getting injured here and there, or even if there were major injuries, not only that, it was a back issue, and that early on into his life, so that certainly was a huge concern for teams. And due to that, MPJ ended up going with the 14th overall selection in the 2018 NBA draft to the Denver Nuggets. And at the time, at that spot, it was seen that the Nuggets got an absolute steal, because even if MPJ wasn't able to play in his entire rookie season, it didn't really matter. If you're picking at number 14, your team is probably relatively good at that point, and you don't necessarily need to rely on the rookie player you draft that year. So the Nuggets were in a phenomenal position. And it was also a great situation for MPJ because there wouldn't be all that much pressure in his rookie season to play right away. And he can take a full season to rest, to make sure all his injuries are healed, and just feel comfortable out there on the court. And that's exactly what happened. In his rookie year, he didn't play whatsoever, and his career really started during the 2019 season. During that season, he averaged 9 points per game on 50% shooting from the field, 4.7 rebounds on 0.8 assists. Now, of course, considering all the expectations that people had for him and the fact that people saw him as a #1 overall selection, those numbers are of course subpar. But when you consider he was only averaging 16 minutes per game and he only played 55 games that year, it was pretty apparent that he wasn't a guy that was getting all that much of an opportunity. And the Nuggets at that point, in my opinion, were doing the exact right thing. They were slowly reeling him into the NBA game. They weren't just throwing him out there and playing him 40 minutes a game to potentially A, lose his confidence if he doesn't play well, but also B, re-injure some of those things that he was dealing with going into the NBA. So in my opinion, they did a phenomenal job at slowly bringing him along. But the season following that, during the 2020 season, that's really where he started to see an increased role, and he really thrived. During that year, he played 31 minutes per game, averaging 19 points per game on 54% shooting from the field, 7.3 rebounds on 1.1 assists. And he also shot an incredible 44% from deep. And those numbers are of course incredible. And those numbers are a lot closer to the expectations that many people had for him going into the NBA. Because the great thing about it was not only are those numbers phenomenal, but he was also very good on the court, and he was very valuable for the Nuggets. He had all those abilities that I touched upon before, like that great 3-point jump shot evident in that very high 3-point jump shot shooting percentage, but he also had a really nice mid-range game, also had a really nice ability to drive all the way to the basket, and overall MPJ just looked phenomenal. But probably the best part about it, besides his raw talent, was the fact that he was fitting in very nicely with Nikola Jokic. Obviously on the Denver Nuggets, Jokic is going to do most of the ball handling on the team and most of the facilitating. So if you have a guy that's as talented as MPJ is, but he also fits in very nicely with with your main player in Jokic, that's going to be extremely valuable to your team going forward long term. Because if those guys can play well together, now you have two guys that are legitimate players that can legitimate be franchise guys on your team for the long run, but they also play very well together, so you can keep them together and not need to move someone down the road. So although there were still certain issues here and there, for the most part during that 2020 season, people were extremely excited. But unfortunately, after that very promising season and even a pretty promising playoffs, the season following during the 2021 season, MPJ's injury issues came up once again, as that season he only played 9 games. And at that point, it was pretty clear what kind of player MPJ was. He was somewhat similar to a guy in Zion. Now obviously I don't think MPJ is nearly as good as Zion is, but I think they're very similar in the sense when they're out there on the court, they're very, very good, and it's pretty clear that they're extremely talented. But the issue with those kind of players is health and how much they can actually stay on the court. Now with a player like Zion, I felt like it was a little more straightforward. It was clear that Zion was overweight, and I thought if he lost a lot of that weight and took a lot of pressure off his knees when he jumps extremely high, that would definitely limit the injuries that he was facing. And this season he lost a ton of weight and he's looking a lot more healthy out there. Now of course Zion, or any player of that matter, can get injured at any point, but it just seemed like that was an obvious fix for Zion, and if he did that he would be more healthy, and so far, knock on wood, it seems like that's holding true. But the issue with MPJ is it's not as simple as that. It's not like MPJ is out of shape, because he's not. The issue with MPJ is he's dealing with a back issue, and back issues are extremely significant and they can reoccur of course. So dealing with MPJ is of course a lot more difficult than dealing with a player like Zion, at least in my opinion. I almost feel like what could possibly be best for MPJ, who knows, maybe this isn't true, but I feel like what could possibly be best is maybe hold him out for an entire season, even if he's healthy. Now that might sound crazy, but if MPJ could just sit on the bench and really make sure he's fully healed and maybe work out on certain aspects of his body to really make certain aspects stronger and less prone to getting injured, maybe he can have a more successful career going forward. Now I'm just a random guy on YouTube. I don't necessarily know if that's true or if that would even be beneficial, but I feel like that could possibly be the right move for MPJ. But as I touched upon before, I think if MPJ could stay healthy throughout the most part of the rest of his career, I think he's going to be extremely talented, and I clearly, at the bare minimum, see him as an all-star type guy. I think he's that talented. But of course, it's going to be something that people follow throughout the rest of his career and see what ends up happening with him. But I will say, me personally, I'm very excited to see how his career does pan out for the rest of it. And if you were to ask me, I do still think there is a hope for MPJ to be relatively healthy throughout the rest of his NBA career. And if that were to be the case, I find it very hard to believe that he wouldn't, at the bare minimum, be an all-star type guy. He's just that good. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening with MPJ on the court, but most importantly, his health. But at this point, I think it's pretty clear that the Denver Nuggets are in somewhat of an interesting situation with his health issues due to the fact that they just dished out a pretty big max contract to him. But if he's healthy, as I talked about before, I think he fits in perfectly with the Nuggets, and I think he makes the Nuggets significantly better. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think MPJ is going to be able to stay healthy throughout the rest of his career, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.